Marc Shanker. I'm a visual artist, and I have a show currently running at the White Plains Public Library. The show is called Imagining the Artist's Book, and it is a show of 15 artist books and 32 prints connected with the books. I'd like to begin my tour of this show with the first book that I wrote, which is called Traces of Sepharad. Sepharad was the name that the Jews in Spain gave to Spain before they were expelled in 1492. And these are proverbs, ancient proverbs in Ladino, which is medieval Spanish. The reason that I began this book was because my grandfather frequently used proverbs. And we all, I was a child, we all sat around and laughed at his proverbs and his sayings. And so I started to illustrate them. And it wound up being a 3.5-year project because I produced the proverbs in etchings, which I had never, ever done before, and which are very complicated and laborious tasks of transferring drawings onto metal plates using acids and resins. So these are an example of 4 of the 45 etchings in the book. I'll just draw your attention to one of them, which is not yet born, but already sneezing. So my interpretation of this proverb is that before a baby is born, it's kicking and moving in the mother's womb, and the mother has some anxiety. What's going on? Is this baby really okay? And so she or someone else uses the proverb, not yet born, already sneezing, to relieve her of the anxiety of carrying the baby. After working on Traces of Sepharad, I felt I needed a different way of printing because I had spent so much time working on the etchings. So coincidentally, I met someone from East Europe who told me that in East Europe, the price of copper was prohibitively expensive, and they used X-ray film instead. This is an X-ray film. And so with this X-ray film, I use a point, a sharp point, and draw into the film, and then ink it, put it on the press, and I print it. So these prints, which are part of 2 books called Man, a Machine of Absurdities, or But a Bubble, were done with X-ray film and a sharp point. These prints took approximately 1.5 years, and while I was doing them, people kept asking me, what is the story behind these prints? What does this mean? And I couldn't explain it. I had no idea what the pictures meant. I just kept doing them because they seemed like an interesting series. But after a while, I decided I really should try to figure out some way to give meaning to these pictures. And so I began the process of writing text. That took 1 year because text connected with a picture should not really define the picture. It should expand the meaning of the picture. In the first book I had done, I already had the text. These were proverbs. And so I used the text to determine the picture. In this case, I used the picture to help determine the text. And so these are very personal because, in a sense, they represent both the picture and my thinking. I'll read you a couple of them. This one here is called Mind. the mind sits at the limits of reason on the edge of a sea of bearings and joints, a crown of tentacles reaching upwards toward the unknown. Well, having done traces of Sephiroth and having studied the Proverbs of medieval Spain, I decided to start writing my own Proverbs. And over a period of years, every time I had an idea, I would write it down. And finally, I put together a book of my own sayings and my own Proverbs. You will notice that a lot of my work seems whimsical and even funny. That's good. But there is also frequently a deeper meaning. And one has to think about the saying or the proverb and their implications to determine that. The other thing about Proverbs is that depending on the context of the proverb, the meaning changes. So they are applicable for many different situations. Let me read you a couple of my proverbs here. This one is, the tie made a statement that the shirt denied. In this proverb, and these are from my book called Cheap Gems, Precious Rocks, which is obviously a reverse of language, since gems are generally very valuable and rocks are very commonplace. This one says, nothing is closer to death than a mouse with only one hole. Over the 13 years that I've been making artist books, one of the goals that I've tried to live up to is taking Greek plays and adapting them to artist books. That means I have to create the art and rewrite the plot in a way that it works together with the pictures and there's a synergy between the language and the pictures. I began first with Prometheus's Gifts, which isn't in the show at the moment. And then I began working on Agamemnon, which is the first book of the Oresteia by Aeschylus. That's the return of King Agamemnon and his subsequent murder by his wife. Instead of doing them as prints, I really wanted to try to expand my way of working, and I decided to do the book as a collage, in a series of collages. And so this wall contains the collages from the 3 books of the Oresteia. And so in this wall, we have Agamemnon, we have libation bearers, Cassandra's vision, and then the trial and the verdict and the resolution of this conflict between the gods and people, humanity. In this case, I have three books. I'm going to basically just discuss one of the books, which is called Looking into the Eye of Doom, The Diary of a Greek Soldier in Troy. My idea behind this book was that the Trojan War, the way Homer presented it, was really battles between superheroes, supermen, powerful leaders, etc. There wasn't much mention of the common soldier. So I went back and did some research and some reading about the actual Trojan War, and created a character of a common farmer who is hoodwinked into going to Troy by agents of Agamemnon and so he enlists to go to Troy to find his riches in the pillaging and looting of Troy. They promise him it's going to be a short war, but as we know, it turned into a very long war. And in this diary, he's questioning why he went and what are the implications, what's happening to his farm, his family, his wife, and when is this ever going to end, and will he ever survive? So it's the war from a different point of view than the Iliad. So doing artwork all the time, day after day and year after year, can be very tiresome and need breaks. So one of the ways that I break is to change mediums. And in terms of books, I do small books on all kinds of subjects. So these books are an example of my small books. There are 12 pages, and they are on all kinds of different subjects that whatever occurs to me. Sometimes I print, in the case of this book. Sometimes I do collages. Sometimes I draw. I use all kinds of different materials. Sometimes I pick up stuff, things in the street and make collages. Whatever it is, it's a much more informal and easygoing and sometimes much more humorous outcome. This exhibit, Imagining the Artist Book, will be continuing until February 4th at the White Plains Public Library, upstairs gallery. I want to thank the library for its great help and for giving me the opportunity to show this work in such a beautiful, bright, and modern setting. I also want to thank all of you for coming. And please, if you do come and see the show, leave a comment in the book at the desk in the front of the show. And let me know how you like it. And if you want to see more work, not just artist books, but paintings, drawings, prints, etc., you can go to www.marcshanker.com.